Before you judge a woman for the choices she makes, listen to her story. She was just 17 when he left her with a swollen belly, a shattered heart, and a world that spat on her name. Everyone told her to end it, to erase the shame, but she chose life. This is the story of Omalicha, a girl the world gave up on, but who refused to give up on her child. Omalicha grew up in a house where love was measured, not felt. Her father, Mr. Samuel Omalicha, a retired civil servant, believed children were to be molded, not heard. His voice echoed like thunder, and silence was expected at the dinner table. Her mother, Deaconess Teresa, was the church's iron lady, respected by all, feared by her children. She spoke more in Bible verses than in affection. Their flat and achara layout was small, and so was Jesus's world. She was the last of 4 children, often ignored or ordered around. Adaora, her older sister, married early and treated Mirela like a shame waiting to happen. Her brothers, Obinna and Chukwudi, were students at UNN, but acted like policemen whenever they came home. "Don't wear that. Don't talk to boys. Don't disgrace us." Everything was a rule. No sleepovers, no birthdays, no questions. Her every move was watched, judged, corrected. Mireille learned early to swallow emotions, to hide pain behind polite smiles, to keep her dreams in her diary. She was beautiful, and they knew it. Her mother often hissed, "That face will bring trouble." Caramel skin, thoughtful brown eyes, and a quiet elegance. She drew attention even when she tried not to. But what hurt most was not being misunderstood. It was not being seen. Nobody asked what she felt, what she wanted, who she was. So, every evening, Mireille climbed to the rooftop. She'd sit alone under the fading Enugu sun, listening to faint radio songs, scribbling in her notebook, and wishing, just wishing, that someone, someday, would love her gently. It began with a rainstorm. Mireille had stepped out to buy suya from the junction when her umbrella flipped inside out. The wind soaked her skirt, tangled her scarf. As she struggled, a deep voice behind her said, "Hold on, let me help." She turned to see him, Major Desmond Atta, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a damp uniform and a kind expression. He fixed the umbrella without a word, handed it back, and walked off with a small nod. She saw him again the next day across the road, leaning on a motorcycle. He waved. She looked away, but it didn't end there. They started talking. Brief greetings became short conversations. He listened, really listened, about her books, her fear of thunder, how she hated Sundays because her family made her feel small. He never interrupted, never judged. Desmond brought her a second-hand novel once, Purple Hibiscus. "You said you liked it," he said. Mireille held the book like it was made of gold. He wasn't just kind. He was warm, curious, gentle. The rooftop Mireille once climbed to escape now became the place where she waited to hear his voice from across the fence. Soon they met in secret, near the barracks, behind stores, inside the empty bus stop. She told him things she never told anyone. He touched her hand like it was fragile. She didn't feel ashamed. She felt seen. Then, one quiet evening, behind his quarters, he kissed her. She gave him everything. Her first kiss, her trust, her innocence. And 3 weeks later, Desmond was gone. No warning, no note, no call, vanished, like he'd never existed at all. The nausea came first, then the aching back, then the missed period. Mireille stared at the test strip in the tiny bathroom behind their flat. 2 bold lines. Her breath caught. Her knees buckled. She dropped to the floor, clutching her stomach, whispering, "No! Please, no!" She waited a week, then another, hoping it would go away, praying Desmond would return. But his number rang endlessly, then stopped working. She wrote him letters, left one at the barracks gate. No reply. Finally, she told her mother. The silence that followed was heavy. Then came the slap, hot, full of fury. Her father heard the shouting and stormed in. "You're pregnant?" he boomed. Mireille nodded, her lips trembling. Everything shattered. Plates thrown, doors slammed. Adaora wailed like someone had died. Obina called her a disgrace. Chukwudi said she should be flogged in public. Her mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing and muttering prayers. The neighbors heard everything. They dragged her to the pastor. He poured oil on her head, shouted in tongues, and accused her of rebellion. She sat there numb, tears burning her face. Later that night, her mother came to her room and said coldly, "You must abort it. That child will ruin you." Mireille looked her in the eye and said, "No." So they did what was next. At dawn, her father threw her clothes into a black nylon bag. "You want to be a woman? Go and suffer like one." Nobody hugged her, nobody cried. No sibling defended her. Her mother turned her face to the wall. Mireille stepped out of the only home she had ever known. 17, scared, with a child growing inside her, and nowhere to go. The street was quiet. Her shame had just begun. The night she left home, Mireille wandered the streets of Enugu with her nylon bag and a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. The city felt colder than usual. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't broken, but because even her tears had dried up. She went to the only place she could think of, Cozy's house. Cozy was her best friend, the only person who had ever truly stood by her. When Cozy opened the door and saw Mireille's swollen eyes and trembling hands, she didn't ask questions. She simply pulled her inside and held her until morning. For a while, things were calm. Cozy's mother allowed her to stay, though cautiously, but within a few weeks, the whispers began. "Pregnant girl in our house? What will people say?" One afternoon, Cozy came home with red eyes and said softly, "Mireille, my mom says you can't stay anymore." It hurt, but Mireille understood. Cozy helped her find a tiny boys' quarters in coal camp. One room, barely wide enough for a mattress. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked, and the toilet was outside, shared with mechanics and apprentices. But it was shelter. Mireille braided hair in front of the nearby provision shop. She hawked roasted plantain in the evenings. Some nights she washed clothes until her fingers bled. On weekends she fetched water for neighbors to earn extra change. Pregnancy drained her. She was always tired, always dizzy, always hungry. But she pressed on. She used her last savings to buy baby clothes from a roadside vendor, secondhand, faded, but clean. She folded them carefully each night like treasure. Alone, in that room that smelled of grease and rust, she whispered to her unborn child, "You're the only reason I'm still standing." Labor came on a stormy Tuesday night. There was no hospital, no nurse, no mother's hand to hold. Just Mireille, curled in pain on the cold concrete floor, screaming through clenched teeth. The landlord's wife rushed in and dragged her to the nearby chemist's shop. It smelled of dust, sweat, and expired drugs. She gave birth on a wooden bench with one flickering bulb overhead. No anesthesia, just agony, grit, and a tattered bedsheet. When the baby cried, Mireille wept harder. She named him Chidi, God exists, because she needed to believe that. The first few months were brutal. Chidi cried through the night. Mireille had no money for formula, so she fed him soaked bread and pap. His first onesie was sewn from an old Ankara blouse. She carried him on her back to the market, braided hair with him sleeping in a sling, and washed clothes with him strapped to her chest. Her body ached. Her soul thinned. But Chidi grew. At 3, he could recite alphabets he saw on torn sachets. At 5, he pointed at a drawing in a discarded science book and said, "Mummy, that's a brain." Mireille stared at him in awe. She taught him how to read with old newspapers. When he asked too many questions, she smiled through exhaustion and said, "One day you'll find the answers." She sold her last gold earring to pay his primary school exam fee. Every morning, she watched him walk to school in oversized sandals and whispered a prayer. Chidi didn't know it, but he was her breath, her hope, her reason to wake up and fight the world again. She had nothing, but she gave him everything. Chidi didn't just grow, he soared. By age 10, he was fixing broken radios from the mechanic shop next door. At 11, he built a toy fan using scrap wire and old batteries. Teachers called him a genius. Mireille called him her answered prayer. But genius didn't pay bills. Mireille was still braiding hair under a torn umbrella, running home when it rained to stop the water from flooding their tiny room. She sold Zobo and used bottles, mended clothes, and sometimes begged landlords for mercy. Chidi never complained. He saw her struggle, and it made him more determined. Then came the national science competition. Chidi was in JSS 3 when he entered, a boy in second-hand shoes, competing against kids from elite schools. He came first. Newspapers called him the boy from nowhere. A professor from Lagos took interest. "This boy doesn't belong here," he said. A scholarship came, then sponsorship, then relocation to Lagos. Mireille hugged him at the park, her heart tearing apart. "Don't forget who you are," she whispered, "and never forget who you are to me." He didn't. Years passed. Chidi finished secondary school early, earned a full scholarship to study medicine in Germany. Mireille couldn't pronounce the name of the city, but she memorized it. She prayed for him every night, tears wetting her wrapper. She didn't have a passport. She didn't know how to use a computer. But every time someone asked her what her son was doing, she would lift her chin and say, "He's saving brains." Because deep inside, she knew. Her son wasn't just special. He was proof that a woman like her, with nothing but love and grit, could raise the kind of child the world would never forget. Berlin was cold. The stage was bright. And the world was watching. At just 28, Dr. Chidi Uzomaka performed a record-breaking brain surgery on a 5-year-old girl with a rare tumor. The medical world erupted. News outlets called him a prodigy. He was invited to conferences, given awards, praised by professors twice his age. But all he wanted was for his mother to be there. When Mireille arrived in Germany, it was her first time on a plane. She wore her best wrapper, the same one she had restitched a dozen times. Her hands trembled when the car picked her up from the airport. The city lights overwhelmed her, but seeing Chidi in a white coat made her forget everything. At the awards ceremony, cameras flashed as Chidi walked on stage and said, "Everything I am, I owe to one woman, my mother." The room stood still. As he pulled Mireille into the spotlight, people wept. She cried too, silently, her hands shaking in his. But she wasn't the only one watching. At the back of the hall, a man stood frozen. His uniform older now, his face aged. But Mireille recognized him instantly. Desmond. He approached her backstage, hesitant. "Mireille!" She turned. Her heart caught in her chest. The years melted in a second. "I didn't know," he said. "I came back to Enugu after my posting. I looked for you. Your family had moved. I thought you left." Mireille stared at him, not with anger, but with a quiet strength. "I didn't leave. I was left." He bowed his head. "Some things come too late." Chidi agreed to meet Desmond the next day. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the air thick with unspoken words. "I wasn't ready," Desmond admitted. "Back then I was young, stupid, selfish. But I want to make things right, if you'll let me." Chidi looked at him, this man who had vanished like smoke and now returned as a shadow. "I'm not angry," Chidi said calmly. "But I don't need another father. I already have one. She raised me with blood, tears, and empty stomachs. She stayed." Desmond nodded slowly. "I understand." And that was it. No dramatic reunion, just truth, quiet and final. Back in Enugu, Mireille returned to the same boys' quarters in Cole Camp. She refused the furnished house Chidi offered. "I'm not ashamed of where I survived," she told him. She still braided hair, still cooked on a charcoal stove. But now, people came to see her not with pity, but reverence. Girls whispered her name like a legend. Mothers cried at her story. Newspapers called her the Iron Mother of Enugu. But Mireille? She just smiled. She had nothing when she started. Just a swollen belly, cracked hands, and the courage to say no when the world screamed yes. And from that, came a man the world called a miracle. The end. To every girl cast aside, every single mother fighting through shame, poverty, and silence, your story is not over. The world may not see your worth today, but one day, the child you chose to keep may change everything. Not all heroes wear medals. Some wear wrappers and scars. What would you have done in Mireille's place? Do you believe Desmond deserved forgiveness? Do we judge too quickly the women we don't understand? Let's talk in the comments. And please don't forget to share and subscribe to my channel. See you next time, and thanks for watching.